Wake up your morning in a brand new way with the positive people, places, events, and things in and around your neighborhood and around the world. No matter where you live, your mornings are about to get better. It's the refreshing way to start your day. No doom or gloom, just bright sunshine no matter what the weather. Metro Magazine with Bonnie McDaniel. Inspiring, informative, intelligent, Ion. Positively the best way to start your morning. Good morning and welcome to Metro Magazine. I am so excited to share with you a very special guest this morning. He has a brand new book out called Radiate the Brain and Change the Game. Sir Charles, as he's called in the industry, is going to share his exciting journey to getting to this point in his life. So please join me in welcoming Sir Charles Cary to Metro Magazine.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, I know this is, what number is this? Number
three.
Three
Yep.
books that you've written. And when did this book come out?
This book came out about 90 days ago.
Oh, wow. So it's hot off the press, if you will.
Hot off the presses, absolutely.
And we're going to talk about this book in a little bit, but
Okay.
I want to provide some context for our viewers
Sure.
and talk about your journey to getting here. I know that you do live here in the Washington, D.C. area, but you kind of took the roundabout way of getting here. So let's go back. Where were you born?
Actually, I was born here.
You were born here, but where were you?
But I was reared in New York City.
In New York
which
City.
I call home.
Okay, okay. And I thought I knew that about you, that
Yes.
you are a New Yorker, if you
Yes.
will. And talk to me about your formative years. You have how many siblings?
Siblings, brother, 3 sisters,
Okay.
and I am the next to the youngest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm gonna probably make you a little uncomfortable just for a minute, but
Uh-oh.
I think that if people know your story, they're going to really appreciate the message that you're bringing.
Okay.
That you didn't just show up
Right.
in the space that you're in right now. So you were a little bit of a naughty boy when you were growing up. So let's talk about some of those days and some of the things that you went through. And the reason I'm asking that question is not to embarrass you, but to really, there are a lot of young men out there who are probably in the space that you were in then.
Right.
And they look at you now. So for you to provide some wisdom, if you will, as to how you got here, I think that would bring a lot of value to this conversation.
That's fine. A lot of, when I tell this story, many people can't see me as that guy.
Right.
But honestly, I wanted to fit in so bad growing up. And when I landed in New York City,
How old were you when you went to New York?
oh boy, I was about 4 years old.
4 years, okay.
And I knew very early on that it was a fast-paced environment. And I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like the other kids so bad. And that need of acceptance, which I talk about in some of my books, that need of acceptance is what pretty much took me down and also brought me back up.
Now that is something that I think, and a lot of us, a lot of people refer to it as peer pressure. And, my being a woman, I guess peer pressure for me is very different for you as a man. If you're talking to a young person and they're feeling that, I need to fit in, explain to our audience, what does it feel like as a man to, what are some of the things that runs through a man's mind when they're trying to fit in?
When I grew up, it was very important in the mindset of a man, you want to be the aggressor, you want to be able to do all the physical things, you want to show that you can, do it, whatever the it is, whether it's physical activities, whether it's dating, you want to be able to show and prove that you have what it takes to be the guy. You're the man, as we always say, hey man this and hey man that. So you want to be the man. And having that need of acceptance, I knew that I was a little different, maybe a little slower.
Okay.
Not as savvy, not streetwise.
Okay.
I really wasn't. And I noticed that the other kids, they seem to be cooler, they have a swag. We didn't call it that back then, but they had a swag, and I wanted that.
Okay.
And I wanted it badly because I wanted to be cool.
So what were some of the things you did to be cool?
cut class. Cut class.
Okay.
And I was really a good kid, you know, so that really wasn't my MO to cut class.
Okay.
But I cut class, tried to stay out later than I was supposed to, smoked pot, and in my formative years, I didn't know if, you know, I guess I did know that it was wrong, but I wanted to do it anyway because I figured if I did all the things all the other kids were doing, that I would get automatic buy-in. But what I did not realize that smoking pot, cutting class, all of this was really the beginning of a negative or bad behavior that would become a lifestyle for me.
Now, let me ask you, so you're cutting class and smoking pot. What was it like at home? Were you getting a lot of pushback, or were you sneaking and your parents really didn't know early on?
In the very beginning, it was about sneaking.
Okay.
However,
Yeah.
my stepdad, he smoked pot.
Okay, so did you learn at home?
Eventually, I smoked with him. Eventually.
Oh, wow. Wow. And you know, it's interesting that you bring that up because I'm a fairly conservative person, and so I hear of or know of situations where parents, some of them have the idea that, well, if they're going to do pot, or if they're going to drink, I want to do it with them and show them how to do it right.
Right.
And a lot of people have that mindset. Was this something that your stepfather thought, or he was just doing it and he thought, hey, I got another person to hang out with me to do it?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
You know, and all of my friends thought, oh man, your dad's the greatest. He's so cool.
So they were all at your house smoking pot?
Yeah. Well, you can smoke with your dad. Oh man, this is cool.
Oh my
Especially in the
gosh.
summer, we go out and play, and then afterwards, if some of the guys would come by the house and we talk about the game we were having, you know, he may be there smoking, and if you were a close friend of mine, he may indulge you. But again, my mom didn't support it though.
So your mother knew?
She knew, but she never, ever truly supported it.
Okay.
Her stance was, your body's a temple, and you don't need to be doing that. And she never wavered on that.
Now, this was your stepfather.
Yeah.
Talk about the first time when you realized he was cool, and that, did you approach him or did he approach you?
I think I remember the very first time I smoked with him, and it was kind of weird because I'd seen it so often. But
You had seen him do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would see him. He would take the album covers. Remember the big square album? I'm messing with you. But he would take these album covers and he'd clean all this weed, and I'd see him rolling it up. And honestly, I really didn't know what he was early on. But at a certain point, I knew what it was, but I didn't have any interaction with him involved. I wasn't involved with him getting high or anything. And one day, I was in my room, and he was in the living room. And I think I went to the kitchen, and he said, "You want a hit?"
Okay.
And inside, I was like, yes!
So, how old were you?
I was about 14.
So and you knew that smoking pot was not something you should be doing.
I knew.
What ran through your head that your stepfather was complicit in something that, even though he was doing it,
Right.
that he knew was, I don't want to use the word wrong, but probably not the thing that he should be teaching you? What ran through your mind?
Well, it was the coolness factor. Now, it wasn't the first time I'd ever smoked, and I never discussed with him that I'd smoked. The first time I smoked with my older brother. However, when he offered it to me, it was like a rite of passage. Got
it. So did your stepfather, was he the one who shared that experience with your older brother, or did he find out?
He may have. I'm not really sure about that, but my older brother didn't live with us.
Okay.
And I was given permission to smoke in my room at home, you know, whenever I wanted to, pretty much, you know.
If I can, I'm going to go back and forth now, because you have the child's Cary today, and you have the 14-year-old whose stepfather allowed him to smoke weed with him.
Right.
The Charles Cary today, with what you know to be the truth today, what are your feelings, you know, the reason I'm asking this question is not to be judgmental, but, you know, raising kids is tough.
Very much so.
You know, and when you start walking down a certain path, you know, where do you draw the line? So having the mindset that you have now, what are your thoughts about that experience, and how, if you were the parent, you would have handled it differently, or would you have handled it differently?
Knowing what I know as a parent, as a grandparent even, I would definitely have handled it different.
Okay.
However,
How would you have handled it differently?
it wouldn't have happened.
It wouldn't have happened with you, or would you not have smoked in front of him?
I wouldn't have smoked with my child.
Okay. And why
And
not?
I would have deterred them not to, because one, it was illegal. Two, thinking about what it could possibly have done to them as far as their focus. That's just not something you want to take a chance with. That's not something that is worth the risk. Habits, becoming regular behaviors, you know, that's just, you know, you're tampering with your own legacy.
And you know, and the reason I'm asking you these questions is, again, not to make you uncomfortable or to be judgmental, but really I want people to get a full flavor of the path that you've traveled.
Right.
For them to understand why you think the way you think now. And it's very easy. I remember when I was a little girl, my grandfather used to say something, and I thought, oh gosh, that's so harsh. He would say, there's nothing worse than an educated fool.
I remember that saying, yes.
Yeah. And it took me many, many years to understand what he meant by that, because it's very easy for people to become experts and talk about, you know, various topics or, you know,
Sure.
various disciplines. But it's another thing to live and speak from a point of experience. And that's what I want our audience to get this morning, that, you know, here's a man who has a book. This is your third book, but you're coming from a space where you've actually experienced this. So you're not just talking just to be talking.
Right.
There's a lot of knowledge here, and there's a backstory there. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to go further into this discussion.
Okay.
And we're going to be right back with Metro Magazine.
When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money.
And welcome back. If you're just joining us, we're here with Charles Cary, known as Sir Charles, and he is the author of a brand new book called Radiate the Brain and Change the Game. When we went to break, we were talking about your experience with drugs.
Yes.
And I was asking you, what was it like in terms of you know, you being exposed by your stepfather, and I guess doing some with your older brother?
Sure.
Talk about your older brother, because you said that he did not live with you, but was there a closeness there?
Oh, yeah. It's so odd that we're speaking of him, because I don't think in any interview that I've ever had, I even mentioned him, and yesterday was his birthday.
Okay.
But he's been missing for over 30 some odd years.
Oh my gosh, talk about that.
He's my best friend. He's my brother. He's a little bit of my dad to me. He's like everything to me.
You said he's missing.
Yeah.
So talk about...
I don't know if he's alive. I don't know if he's dead. There's no hospital records. There are no prison records. There's nothing traceable to my understanding about what his whereabouts.
How old was he when he disappeared?
When he disappeared, he had to be about 21, 22.
Okay.
And today, until today, I still know nothing. He has one son, and his son's interests are identical to his father's.
Wow. So how old was the son when his dad disappeared?
Months old.
Okay.
Months old.
And do you all know the circumstances?
No, I have my ideas, but it goes into the political and the conspiracy, realm, which I can't prove anything.
Okay. So your brother has been missing for 30 years.
Yeah.
And wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
So it was your older brother, and who else? What other siblings did you have?
I have two younger sisters.
And they grew up with you?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so talk to me about your younger sisters. Did they pretty much follow the same pattern that you followed in terms
Negative.
of, okay.
No.
So
they were good
didn't,
girls.
okay, so
were
they
good
didn't hang out with dad smoking pot.
No. I was
Oh,
I was
gosh.
the oldest at that time, and that was something that was limited. It wouldn't happen. It would happen maybe daily if he and I were the only ones there, or he and I and my mom. But it wasn't something that would happen when company was there. It was just a personal and a private.
It was recreational for the two of you.
Yeah.
So how did this impact school for you? Because you're 14 years old, you're
Right.
smoking pot with your stepfather. And I mentioned earlier that as a parent, again, and I can't use myself as a gauge because, like I
Sure.
said, I'm fairly conservative. But there is, I do believe, whether you're conservative or not, I think most people will grasp the fact that you know, when you start walking down a certain path,
Yep.
where do you draw the line? Because once kids see you a certain way, how are you able to discipline? How are you able to guide? I mean, how did that affect your, first of all, school
Right.
and your relationship in terms of him being able to guide you as an adult?
To me, it did not make for a concrete relationship. However, in the beginning, it seemed to be just the coolest thing. Eventually, I even sold weed in school for a little while. It was a short period of time.
So were you getting it from your stepfather?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was he
Absolutely.
aware?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but again, it was short-lived, but from my perspective, it was trying to get into that need of acceptance, that buy-in factor. Oh, Charles is cool. Oh, Charles has the goods. You know, I wanted people to know that I was all that in a bag of chips, as we used to say.
Now, you are, and again, I want to go back and forth because I know that was then, but this is now, and you have a totally different understanding, a different mindset about the order of things.
Oh, yeah.
So as a dad, as a grandfather, there's perhaps a man who's listening right now who has the idea that, you know, hey, I want my son to hang out with me. I'm smoking, I'm doing whatever. What would you say to him about that?
Let them be a child.
Okay.
Let them grow and learn the things that they need, the essentials that they need to learn so that they can be productive in society.
What would you say? You said let them be a child. What would you say in terms of the role of parent? What should be that relationship in your opinion? And should they have input in terms of what being a child looks like?
Absolutely, I think so. I think that as a parent, you expose your children to things that you feel are fruitful, that help mold and shape their lives. And everything shouldn't be so structured that the kid or the child can't have fun. However, you want to contribute and suggest things that really benefit them as children. You know.
But when you come to the subject of drugs, and I know right now there's a very, very big debate going on, especially about marijuana.
Right.
And I know I have been privy to people who have, you know, illnesses, cancer.
Sure.
People who are suffering with depression, where marijuana has, in a lot of ways, saved their lives or helped them to have a better existence. But so the debate that's going on is whether or not, number one, should it be considered like, you know, alcohol? Is there a place where parents, in your opinion, especially a male parent, is there a place that given all of the other people's opinions, what role should you be playing in terms of guiding your children when it comes to marijuana? And even alcohol, what should be the message, do you think?
I really don't think that anything mind-altering should have a place in a child's life, and I'm talking about even teens. Mind-altering substances should not have any part of a child's life. Those are the productive years. Those are the formative years when, you know, the brain is still growing. thoughts and ideas are developing, experiences are starting to happen for the very first time. And when you start stunting those opportunities with substance and chemicals, you're doing yourself a grave injustice, and you're definitely doing a grave injustice to that child. So
do you
I don't think that should be a part of their life.
Now, I'm going to ask you another tough question, because I'm going to go back to your formative years.
Sure.
You did pot. Did it go further than that with other drugs?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. They say, at that time, they used to say it was a gateway drug. Now, that's debatable, but I still think that marijuana is one of maybe many gateway drugs. Maybe alcohol should be considered a gateway drug as well. But I did other drugs. I did, not as a teen, but I eventually did cocaine, hallucinogenics. I did almost everything that you can think of except for intravenous drugs.
So what was going on? And again, I'm asking the question because I want people to know you. What was it about Sir Charles? And I want to ask you about that, Sir Charles, in a few minutes.
Sure, absolutely.
What was going on in your life that made drugs seem like the solution for you? Or what wasn't there?
Well, there's a couple of things, Music has been a part of my family for a very long time, and they always say that drugs, women, and rock and roll, right? So it was a part of the environment that I regularly participated in as a musician also, performing, doing gigs.
So you play?
Yeah, I'm a vocal singer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was exposed to it, and I would have been exposed to it at some point anyway. However, that does not mean that I had to participate. I chose to participate because I already had been exposed to it. I thought that I knew what was going on, and I did, but I really took advantage of myself.
But you said, again, initially you did it because you wanted to be cool.
Yes.
Once you came of age, what was your reason? Because you knew the effects it had on you. Was there something missing that the drugs were able to fill within yourself? There had to be a reason why you decided that this is something I want to do.
Honestly, Bonnie, I think that it just became habit forming, and I didn't realize it. It became something you did, like washing up in the morning, like brushing your teeth. Because most mornings, I would smoke a joint on the way to school if I could, and if not, definitely after school. It just became something we did, like homework.
Okay.
It really did.
So you're the drug that I would say you graduated to cocaine from pot. Tell me about that first experience.
My first experience after using pot was, I believe, what we call blotter, which was acid.
Okay.
So that was the hallucinogenics. A bunch of us friends, we would get together and watch music programs or whatever, and we get beer and we go buy a bunch of blotter and we experience it together. So it was never an isolated thing, but we would do it together and have good fun and laugh. We'd drink, we'd smoke, and just have a great time, really. That's what it all amounted to, with and without the acid. I mean, it was just a fun experience, But, and we didn't do it all the time, but we did it from time to time on occasion. Just something that you did in your evolution as a teen, your independence.
But I want you to get beyond the teen years, when you were an adult.
Now, as an adult,
because
I got into the cocaine.
Right. That's what I wanted to talk about, because then I would imagine that with years of experience, because you started at 14, by the time you get to 21, when you have several years under your belt. What was it? What was going on in
the club scene
in Sir Charles's life? And I want to take a quick break and come back, because you're scared. You're skating around the issue, and I'm sure there's some things going on, and I want you to share them, because I think in your sharing, people are going to begin to understand and appreciate this book a lot
Okay.
more. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back with more Metro Magazine.
On October 23rd through the 27th, 2014, the original artwork of over 1,000 Syrian youth from the Zatari refugee camp in Jordan will be displayed on the iconic National Mall in Washington, D.C. Peace and Hope tells the story of Syrian children displaced by over 3 years of conflict that has left millions in need of life-saving aid. The 1/3 of a mile-long canvas tells a different narrative, one of resilience, determination, of hope, and of a brighter future. We need your help to share these powerful stories against the backdrop of the U.S. Capitol and the Washington Monument. Help us show the world that now is not the time to walk away from these amazing children, but rather to invest in their future.
When we went to break, we were getting ready to talk about your adult years and the drug use. And again, I'm staying there for a minute because there's a lot more on the other side of that point in your life. And you were getting ready to talk about the cocaine use and why. So
those years, you know, like everything else, in the beginning, it's always fun. You know, you do it with others and groups and at parties and all this stuff. And I started to find out that for myself, I always like having my own. But what I didn't realize was that I was really digging a hole for myself.
What do you mean by having your own?
Like when the party was over, I wanted to be able to experience the weed, the coke, whatever it was, by myself.
Got it.
So I didn't have to share it. Because I always worked. I always had plenty of whatever I wanted, you know. And I believe that mindset, although it can serve you, it could also work against you. And for me, it did. And the reason why is because after, you know, powder cocaine lost its glamour, you know, I graduated to crack cocaine.
Wow.
And see, and again, I always worked. So the guys in the neighborhood always knew, oh, Charles works, he's got something. So anytime I came home, they were always there.
So now here's where you can give me provide me with an education. You said you graduated from powdered cocaine to crack cocaine, because I was always under the impression that crack cocaine was a poor man's drug and people who snorted cocaine had more money. Talk to me about that, because you can educate me.
It's all about the processing. There's different ways it's processed. There are cheaper ways of taking cocaine and making it smokable.
No, that I understand, but graduation. Okay, go ahead.
The thing is, if you have what's called base, they call it base. They used to call it base. Didn't taste as good, but it was smokable. If you were on a lower economic level, you would probably smoke that over smoking the crack.
Okay.
Meaning that the crack was cooked and processed better with baking powder and baking soda versus ammonia or whatever other substances that they put in it to make it smokable.
So you knew that this was a process when you were doing it, or you learned this afterwards?
And I learned by design, because I got tired of spending so much money and not really feeling I was getting my worth. And
your worth being your high?
Yeah.
Okay.
And every education in that area was to my demise, but I still could not see it.
Wow.
I'm walking around, working in a white-collar job, looking like a crackhead, not realizing how I appear, showing up to work on time, wearing the suits.
So you were a functioning crack addict?
A polished functioning crack addict.
Wow.
Sunken in eyes, thin, way below my weight level, doing all the things I'm supposed to do, performing, quote unquote, performing properly, but not really performing as the person I really am, the person I'm supposed to be. And I remember my dad had told me one day, son, if you can't look at yourself in the mirror, that's a problem.
This is the same man who introduced you to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
Now,
interesting.
even a broken clock is right twice a day, right?
Yeah.
However, that was when I was about 9 years old. When I heard those words again, just thinking about him telling me, I was 38.
And
And I realized that
you were a crack addict at 38?
yeah,
Okay.
I couldn't stand myself anymore.
Okay.
I had been on drugs for over 25 years.
When did it dawn on you? Because I know time passes very quickly, and it doesn't, normally it takes an event, sometimes it's a death or something happens that make you realize, oh my God, I've been doing this for 20 years, I've been doing this for 30 years. What happened to make you realize that you had been doing the same thing, getting deeper and deeper?
I was going nowhere fast. I had a lot of opportunities. The thing that hurt my heart the most was, at that point, at that point, I was really deep into my music, singing, going out on casting calls, performing, and for the very first time, a band asked me to leave.
Were you cutting up?
No, I was doing what I'm supposed to do as a singer, as a vocalist, but I wasn't hitting the notes.
I was about to ask you, because, again, I am so, some people call me boring because I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything.
Right.
Mainly because I love myself. And so what you see me doing now is what I drink 99% of the time, and that's water. So you are a singer. Your voice is how you make your money.
Right.
And smoking crack cocaine, it never occurred to you that you might ruin your vocal cords?
Yeah, but I'm active. Yeah, but people love me, you know. That's the mindset.
Okay.
Cunning, baffling, insidious, they say.
Yeah.
But because I'm active, because the last gig, everyone applauded, because, you know, I got a little bit of change, even though I spent it the moment I got it, you know, you figure, you know, you got time. And then one day the reality smacks you dead in the face. This is it.
So-
Look at yourself.
So they asked you to leave.
Yeah.
And what did you do after that?
I was shocked. I was floored. These are guys that have been on the road all around the world. They played with many of the top R&B and some jazz artists like Keith Sweat and at the time Teddy Riley, all these big names. We've heard these names. We've heard the songs. But they were the touring band that would go out with some of these major artists.
Okay.
They were tired of being on the road, and they wanted to get their own unit together when they came back to the States.
So they knew you were doing crack.
They probably knew without knowing. They knew something was amiss.
So why? Oh, you weren't hitting the notes, so they
I wasn't
thought-
hitting the notes. Here I am, 6'1", almost 6'2", looking underweight, performing, not hitting the notes, not really having that person-to-person contact. You know,
So were you high when you were going
yeah.
on stage?
many times. In
So-
fact, most times.
So were your vocal cords, was your voice diminishing? Is that why you weren't hitting the notes? Or was it
believe it
because
was.
you were
Absolutely.
high? Okay.
Changing the key of a song because my voice is not in shape, not rehearsing like I should,
Okay.
you know, not doing the things I want to do for something that I claim I love that much, something that was a part of my DNA before I was born. Everyone in my family sang.
Would you say that someone who is perhaps now just starting out, a young man, young woman, experimenting with drugs, would you say that this is where they're going to wind up, where you found yourself, or can they play and get out of the game? I mean, what would you say to someone who's saying, "Oh, I'm just doing a little pot"? What would your message be to them?
That pretty much is what they say today. You know, I've spoken to many kids at
And that's right, you
career
go out
days,
and speak. Okay.
youth awareness, career day or drug awareness days, and many of them feel that, man, I don't want to smoke. I mean, crack, nah, I just want to smoke a little weed. That's all I do. And they don't realize even that has a diminishing effect on your brain, you know, your reflexes, your memory. So it all is very realistic. It can all affect your career and companies.
And
they don't want to hire people that use drugs.
Exactly, and again, I go back to, without being judgmental, that whatever it is you're choosing to do in
Yep.
life, once you start down that path, especially when you are compromising your values,
Yes.
where do you draw the line?
Yep.
And I think that's the big question that, for me, listening to your story, I would want to parlay to our audience. Where do you draw the line? Where do you say enough is enough? And then how do you pull back?
Right.
Or can you pull back? Because,
Wow. I tell you, I'll be honest with you, it's amazing for my life that I am the person that I am today because of so much drug use. And I'm talking about the marijuana, the drinking, the cocaine, the crack, the hallucinogenics. I mean, everything that I poured into my body. There's no way that you can't tell me I contributed to my own health conditioning today.
Now, we're going to talk about a health challenge that you've been battling now for a few years. I want to talk about that moment when because usually it's hitting a wall and you finally say enough. We're going to talk about that. I want you to share that story when we come back.
Sure.
We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with more Metro Magazine.
Up to 40% of businesses never recover after experiencing a major disaster. Make a plan at ready.gov/business.
Charles, when we went to break, you were beginning to talk about that moment of hitting the wall.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
Well, it was a cold realization that I had to confront within myself.
What happened?
It was all about doing the drugs and all that, yes, but what I learned that it was about the process. I stopped enjoying the high so much. I started enjoying the process. And I looked at everything that I did, and I realized it was all habit forming. You enjoyed getting high. You enjoyed the process of getting high, meaning going to get it, preparing to do it, as well as doing it. They were three separate entities that all worked together. But I also looked at the fact that when that band, I was part of a band, and they asked me to leave the group, that had never, ever happened to me. I was always accepted as, a good vocalist, a good performer, and for a group to ask me to leave.
So was this the moment when you started to have that come to Jesus, if you will, conversation with yourself? Was this the moment that process began?
Well, it was around that time, absolutely. And I looked at my kids. My kids were 2 and 3 years old.
And I was about to ask you about your family, because I know that you have adult children and grandchildren. And so even though Charles was doing all of this stuff, there were other people's lives that were also being impacted. Talk to me about your family life. Were you married through all of this, or?
Legally, no.
Okay.
But one of the things that ran through my mind was that in 1968, my father was murdered.
Your
my biological father was
okay.
murdered. In 1975, my eldest brother was also murdered. A year or so after that, my brother that was right above me, he disappeared. And it came to me that you're next.
Wow.
What are you going to do? You have a son. You have one son that could possibly not just pass the name down, but maybe do something significant. You're next. What are you going to do?
Wow.
And I realized, I looked into the eyes of my children,
and you had two at this
I have 3 children.
Okay.
2 lived with me. And I realized that I was raping them of their innocence through my lifestyle. I'm the hero. I'm the one. Daddy, take me to the store. Daddy, take me to the park. I would play with them in the house. Recklessly jumping over the couch, doing all kind of silly stuff. I was their playmate. I was their dad. I was their everything.
Did your children see you do drugs?
Never, literally. But
what do you mean?
Well, they never saw me actually in the process of using something or smoking.
But they knew you.
I think instinctively, they knew.
And what was their mother what was her reaction
She
to
couldn't
you?
stand it.
And okay,
She couldn't stand it. And
So it created a lot of-
I couldn't blame her.
so it created some dissension in your home.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I remember her saying, "Don't become pitiful." That was before the kids. When we got together, she said, "Don't become pitiful."
So when you guys got together, you were doing drugs,
Yeah, we all did.
including her.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it wasn't at that level. Nothing was at the level it was when the straw broke the camel's back.
And I'm listening to your story, and I know that there are so many families out there who are in similar situations,
Yes.
who are doing drugs, who are selling drugs. Some of them, and this is certainly not an excuse, but a lot of them are doing it because this is how they pay the bills.
Right.
And there are many moments when I hear the stories, listen to the stories, and I see the children who are coming up in an environment like that. And it's just, for me, it's overwhelming because I'm one of those people who feels like, okay, what can I do to help?
Right.
You know, how can I change this? But I also feel a certain amount of ignorance because I've never myself lived in a situation like that, although I will say that I've had family members
Sure.
who have either died from drugs, who I know used drugs, who in some instances have even sold drugs. I'm aware. But I've always had this feeling, and still do, of just feeling overwhelmed. And my question to you is, someone who has hit the wall, this has been your life for decades, how do you get rid of that feeling of feeling as though I can't do anything? What made you say, enough?
I thought about my brother, I think more than anything.
The one who was missing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he was the one that always told me or showed me or gave me. You know, I remember when I was about, I don't know, maybe 15, before he disappeared, he said to me, "Stop smoking so much." And I was like, He said, "You don't need to be smoking all the time." Now, he had introduced me to smoking somewhat, to a degree. The first time I had smoked, and I felt like, you know, someone's trying to show me the right way or whatever the case may be. However, when he said stop smoking so much, I was shocked. And he wanted me to take a more mature approach in life, because I was just still fun-loving Charlie. You know, that was my demeanor. You know, that's where I was at, but I wasn't ready to grow up at that point. And when I hit that wall, I thought about him, wanting to make him proud, and knowing that he had been missing for so long, that it would be a waste of everything he tried to, you know, what he stood for and everything he tried to pour into me, and the fact that the entire family line would just be gone.
Yeah, you were the only male left.
The entire family line would be gone. And, you know, what did my life amount to? It was sad. And I realized within myself, honestly, I didn't like getting high anymore. I fell in love with the process, but that's not getting high, so why are you doing it? It didn't make sense. And I know that, I don't want to preach, but God didn't save me just so that I could be alive. He saved me for a purpose.
And what do you think that purpose is?
I think it's people.
Okay.
To help people, to work with people, to teach and show people.
Okay. Now you, and I'm also I'm a believer that charity begins at home. What did you do? And I want to talk to you about what you're doing to educate and share with the masses. But I want to talk about home, because you said you had a son. You had 3 children, and one of your fears was that if you went away, he would be the only one left to carry on the family name. What did you and your child's mother do to change the process?
Well, I actually went to her and I said, we can't do this anymore. Although I was the biggest offender, I said, we can't do this anymore.
And what was her reaction?
I don't think she believed me, or I don't think she knew where it was going to go.
Had you promised not to do it before?
Excuse me. I had promised not to do drugs several times in the past.
Okay, so she had precedent then. She's like, okay, this is another one of those conversations. Yeah. Okay.
However, the very next morning, I went to Harlem Hospital, to the psych department, and spoke to someone. And they came up with a plan.
Oh, so you went and you sought help.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. A lawyer should never represent himself, and a doctor cannot operate on himself.
Exactly.
I sought help. And although throughout the interview, the counselor, the doctor, the psychiatrist, he felt that I had a lot of intelligence and a lot of this and that, I was in no position to utilize it because I wasn't utilizing it. So he said to me, he says, if I get you a bed tomorrow, will you commit to coming tomorrow and being a part of the program? And I said, yes.
And did you?
And I did, immediately.
Did you look back after that? Were there relapses?
No. I hesitated because I had tried once before, but not that way. I had tried once before by leaving the area, getting away from the community for about 2 or 3 months, coming back, only falling on my face. But when that decision was made and I went to seek help, there was no relapse. Never.
And you said something interesting. You said you thought you would handle it yourself, manage it yourself, so you left the area.
Right.
But then you came back. And I want to talk about that because, again, I've seen up close family members who have been engaging in, cousins or whatnot, engaging in certain types of activity. And, my not having done,
Sure.
those kinds of things myself, it was always curious to me, it's like, if I was 350 pounds and I got that way because I love cheesecake, the worst thing in the world would be to lock me in a room, give me nothing else to have but cheesecake. I'm going to eat it.
I'll get a job at the Cheesecake Factory.
Exactly. So I want you to talk about the fact that one of the important things to do is to totally remove yourself. You're talking about friends, you're talking about places you used to hang out. Why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, the first time I thought that if I remove myself from a familiar environment, that would be part of the answer. And I would seek treatment if necessary or if it was available. And I left New York, came to D.C., stayed with my mom and my sister. Between the two of them, I spent several months, gained some weight back, started looking more like my normal self. And I felt that I had the answer. In fact, I even committed myself to a 28-day program at D.C. General. And after 2 days, I signed myself out because I got the answer. I know what I need to do.
And you went back in the same environment. And I want to move along because I don't want to run out of time before we have an opportunity to talk about your latest book. But you said something that really, that I think is real important. In listening to you, you talked about the fact that you went someplace to seek help.
Right.
And you talked about the fact that, time before you had tried it and then you went back to the same environment. Accountability is what I got from your saying, I went to someone who could help me.
Yes.
Talk about accountability and how important that is.
Well, I think that many people allow pride to get in the way. And I understand. You want to be able to handle it yourself, whatever it is. However, when it's something as serious as substance abuse or any type of addiction, anything, doesn't matter, or even a failed health issue that you're confronting, you can't fix you in most cases. It wasn't until late in life that I realized that to ask for help is really a sign of strength. As men, we don't usually like to ask for help.
No, you don't. Even the biggest thing is if a man is lost, He will not ask directions. He'll
Figure it out.
continue to go around in a circle until he runs out of gas normally. So, yeah.
So I realized that, I need to look beyond myself. And I did, and thank goodness the help was there.
So you wound up being diagnosed with cancer.
Yes.
And at what stage was this? How old were you when that happened? Or how many
I
years
had
ago?
been clean from drugs for a few years, actually. And everything was going well. I'm singing, I'm doing poetry, I'd written my first book, whatever. And I got a call, and the doctor says, we believe that you have cancer. And I'm like, I'm just in such great disbelief. So
Was this, could you trace it back to your drug use, or what type of cancer was it?
they never shared a causation, but, as I tried to allude to it earlier, there's no way you can't tell me that I am responsible for some of my own health issues. The way I treated my body with all the drugs, all the years, the lack of sleep, the fatigue. I mean, I was just asking for something to go wrong, and the body can only take but so much.
And so you took all of these experiences, and one day you woke up and said, okay, it's time for me to give back. And I imagine that give back came with your first book?
Actually came with the second one, Courage, Facing Mortality.
Okay.
Cancer wasn't my only obstacle.
Okay, what was the first book?
First book was called Poetic Expressions.
Okay, so you were working within your creative realm, if you will. And talk very quickly about that first book and
The first
what
book
was the theme
great.
of that?
It was about motivational and inspirational poems. It was about relationships. It was about...
This was the second book?
the first book.
The first book. Okay, talk to me about the second one.
Okay, the second book basically is a storyline book that chronicles my challenges in the world of substance abuse. In hindsight, what I learned, how I was focusing on all the wrong things, trying to fit in, trying to be a leader, and just doing all the things that really took me nowhere. In addition, it also focused on what it's like to be a 2-time cancer survivor.
Okay. Okay.
You know.
And I would imagine, it's interesting that if I'm looking for someone to guide me, I want someone to guide me who's had experiences.
Yes.
Because I go back to what I said my grandfather used to say when I was a little girl, there's nothing worse than an educated fool. I want someone with some experience. So I would imagine that it played a big role, your life experiences, in your being able to write both your books.
Sure.
But especially the one that I want to talk about right now, Radiate the Brain and Change the Game. Talk about this book.
Well, not just because it's my recent work. I think it's my best work to date, and I'm basing that on the testimonials that I'm receiving. The responses have just been mind-blowing.
Okay. What is it about the book that people like?
I think because it's a simple read.
Okay. Well,
Yet
what
it has-
in particular do they like? The
I
message.
think the
what
fact
part
that
of it?
it challenges them.
In what way?
It makes them accountable to who they are.
So radiate the brain. What do you mean by that?
Well, when you radiate the brain, it's like I tell people, when you get cancer, you'll either get chemo or radiation.
Okay.
And that will make you vulnerable.
So is that what you mean by radiate the brain?
Yes,
Okay.
And change the game.
So it's your vulnerabilities that you're talking about.
Open up to being vulnerable so you can change your perspective and get different results in life.
Okay. Okay. What motivated you to write this book, by the way?
It's two-tier. I really didn't have any intentions on writing another book.
Okay.
However, I'd recently participated in a reality show.
So talk to me about the reality show.
I'm
laughing
sorry.
only because I have my own opinion about reality shows, and it doesn't really matter because reality shows seem to be taking over the world. And some
Right.
of them are cute,
Right.
but I'm just always curious about,
Well, Dr. Jolly had told me about writing the other books.
Willie.
And stuff. Yeah,
Willie's a friend of mine, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So, okay. And his other mentee, who was very successful also in the speaking, world, Delatoro McNeil, he had this idea of a reality show. He said, Charles, if you're going to do the show, you got to write a book. And I'm like, I just wrote a book. He says, no, you got to write a book. You got 90 days to write this book.
Now I understand where this title came from. This sounds like Dr. Jolly. Radiate the brain and change the game. Okay.
So I wrote the book, and I went on this journey to do this reality show. They took 9 speakers, trainers in office, put us in a mansion, gave us a bunch of challenges, and it wasn't your typical reality show.
Okay.
It was a reality show where we really rooted each other on. We were competing against each other.
So it was a competition of
Yes.
people who were in your field.
Yes.
So as a result of your having participated in that, you came up with this book.
Yes.
And I see that you also have a workbook. So
Right.
you're going to help people. You're not only telling them, you're trying to help them to develop their own path to
Absolutely.
to changing their own personal games.
Absolutely.
Games. And this is a DVD?
It's a CD audio.
Okay.
It focuses on the pros and cons about the people you deal with, the places you go, and the things that you do.
Now, there is an audio. Is it in your voice?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I have been so fascinated by, I knew a little bit about your story. And I am absolutely certain that someone watching the show today is going to be able to gain some insight based upon some of the challenges that they're facing in life. And I do, again, I appreciate so much you being transparent and sharing your vulnerable spots,
Sure,
you know, the
sure.
things that have happened in your life in order to bless someone else. So if you would take a moment, because we are running out of time, and let our viewers know where they can purchase your book, your CD, or your workbook.
Okay,
And you
great.
can look into that camera right there.
For those that are interested in literally changing your circumstances, whether you're in a transition or whether you're re-entering the workforce for the first time, or maybe even a youth trying to decide what to do with your life, go to my website directly. It's exclusively available on my site, which is www.sircharlescaryinc.com. So when you go to the site, you'll see a few options, and you can get all the information on either book. This one, Radiate the Brain and Change the Game, or Courage Facing Mortality.
Very quickly, you know what I forgot to ask you? Sir Charles, where did that come from? We have a couple of seconds
Okay.
left.
During the 90s, when I was still singing and doing a lot of gigs, a record producer said, we need a name for you. What about Sir Charles? And I said, sure, why not? And it stuck, so I never bothered to change it.
It stuck, and on that note, we're going to end this episode of Metro Magazine. And I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are quite welcome, Sir Charles. And that's going to do it for us this week. And I will see you next week, same time, same place, on the flip side. Have a great week.